He drained my life savings to fund his perfect family, mocking me for having no life. He thought the law was on his side, but he never read the fine print on the documents I made him sign. There's a difference between being broke and being poor. Being broke is temporary. It's a cash flow problem. You eat ramen for a week, you put off buying that new video game, you wait for the next paycheck. Poor is different. Poor is a state of being. It's a low-grade fever of anxiety that never quite breaks. It's the smell of old grease and quiet desperation that seeps into the floorboards and never leaves. I grew up poor. Not can't afford the newest of phone, poor, but actually poor. The kind where dinner is toast with a little bit of butter and you pretend it's a normal meal. The kind where you learn, real young, how to make yourself invisible when the landlord knocks on the first of the month because your mom needs just a few more days to get paid from her second job. My mom worked at a convenience store in the morning and cleaned offices at night. My dad was a mechanic, but not the kind with a clean shop and a logo on his shirt. He was a backyard mechanic, fixing cars for cash under the single, flickering bulb of our dilapidated garage. Every month, he'd say he was going to get his certification, open a real shop. Next month, Artie, he'd say, wiping grease from his hands with a rag that was already black with it. Next month, things are going to change. That next month never came. My brother Leo and I shared a tiny room in our two-bedroom house. We didn't just share a room. Until I was 15, we shared a mattress on the floor. Leo is 2 years older than me, and he hated every second of it. I remember the day he took a black permanent marker and drew a thick, unwavering line down the exact center of the stay mattress. "This is my side," he'd snarled, his face inches from mine. "You cross this line, I swear to God, I'll break your arm." Mom got furious about the marker, but a new mattress was a luxury we couldn't afford, so we just flipped it over. But the line was always there, a hard ridge we could both feel through the thin fabric, a permanent border between his world and mine. I started working the day I turned 14, filling out an application at McDonald's. Every summer, every weekend, every holiday break was spent earning, saving, trying to build some kind of buffer against the constant tide of bills that threatened to drown us. School was my only real escape. Our district was underfunded, with cynical, burnout teachers and textbooks from the 90s, but I studied anyway. The public library became my second home. We couldn't afford internet, so I used their ancient desktop computers to teach myself to code. My dad used to watch me hunched over a keyboard, his brow furrowed in confusion. "A man's got to know his place, Artie," he'd say, and I know he meant it as a warning, a way to protect me from disappointment. Don't get your hopes up. Don't try to be something you're not. But I took it differently. I knew my place wasn't on that greasy floor in that failing house. I just didn't realize that changing your place meant you might have to leave people behind. I remember one afternoon, I must have been about 12. I got a certificate for academic excellence, just a piece of paper from the school, but I was proud of it. I showed it to Dad, who grunted his approval. "Look at Mr. Big Shot." Leo sneered from the corner where he was trying to fix a broken radio. "Gonna read your way out of here?" He wasn't really asking. It was an accusation. And in a way, he was right. That's exactly what I planned to do. The climb out was a blur of exhaustion. I got into community college and worked full-time loading trucks on a night shift at a warehouse. I'd go to my morning classes with my hands shaking from fatigue, the smell of diesel still clinging to my clothes. But every past exam, every IT certification I earned felt like another rung on a ladder leading out of the dark. My first real tech job was help desk stuff. Nothing glamorous, but the paycheck was more than my parents had ever made combined. The first thing I did wasn't for me. I took my mom to a dentist. She'd been living with a painful, abscessed tooth for years, managing it with aspirin and silence. Seeing the relief on her face after the root canal was worth more than any sports car or fancy watch I could have bought. I started helping with bills, making sure the rent was paid on time, every time. That's when things with Leo and his wife, Brenda, started to shift. Suddenly, every week was a new emergency. Their car broke down, even though Leo was supposed to be a great mechanic like Dad. Their kid needed new school clothes. Their refrigerator died. I always helped, transferring a few $100s here and there, feeling a sense of pride, that I could be the one to solve their problems. The big one came when they wanted to buy a house. They found a small starter home, but the bank wouldn't approve them on their own. Leo's cash-based income was irregular, Brenda worked part-time at a daycare, and their credit was a mess. They sat me down at my mom's kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten so many toasts for dinner meals. "Art, you're our only hope," Brenda said, her voice thick with practiced sincerity. She laid a hand over mine. "We'd be stuck in that crappy apartment forever without you. You're the best brother." They wanted me to co-sign the mortgage. Looking back, it was a 5-alarm fire of a red flag. But at that moment, all I saw was my big brother asking for my help. All I felt was the validation. I wasn't just a nerdy little brother anymore. I was the successful one, the one they needed. I agreed. I even helped them with a chunk of the down payment. But I'm a cybersecurity analyst. My job is to think about vulnerabilities, to build firewalls, to plan for the worst-case scenario. It's ingrained in me. So, before we signed, I read every single line of the mortgage agreement. Tucked away in the boilerplate was a standard co-signer clause. I pointed it out to the loan officer. "I want to add a specific addendum here," I said, trying to sound casual. "A standard default clause. If payments are missed for more than 3 consecutive months, as the co-signer, I have the right to take over the mortgage payments and assume full control of the property to protect my credit. It's just a formality, a bank requirement to protect us all." Leo just laughed, clapping me on the shoulder. "Whatever you say, big brother. You're the one with the big brain. Just tell me where to sign." He signed the addendum without even reading it. He just saw the house, the symbol of a life he thought he was owed. He never saw the firewall I was quietly building. I hoped I'd never have to use it. 2 years passed. I got promoted, moved into actual software development, and started making good money. And I met Chloe. We met at a tech conference in Seattle. She was a data analyst giving a presentation on predictive modeling, and I was instantly captivated. She was brilliant, driven, and funny. During a lunch break, we got to talking. It turned out she grew up like me, working-class family, community college, clawed her way up on her own merit. For the first time, I felt like I was talking to someone who just got it. There was no need to explain the invisible weight of your past, the hunger to build something better. She already knew. We started dating, and it was the easiest, most natural thing in the world. With her, I wasn't just the guy who got out. I was just Art. My family, however, saw it differently. Before they even met her, Brenda was telling relatives I was dating some rich girl who probably thought she was better than them. I waited 6 months before I brought Chloe to a Sunday dinner at my parents' house. I wanted to be sure it was serious. In retrospect, I should have waited forever. The moment we walked through the door, the temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Leo gave Chloe a curt nod, his eyes scanning her up and down before dismissing her. My mom gave her a tight, nervous hug. My dad just grunted from his recliner. Chloe, bless her heart, tried her best. She had brought a homemade apple pie, having found out from me that it was my mom's favorite. She tried to talk to Brenda about her kids, offered to help in the kitchen, and even asked Leo about the engine he was rebuilding in the garage. She was met with one-word answers and cold shoulders. The entire meal was a masterclass in passive aggression. "Must be nice, eating at fancy restaurants all the time," Brenda said to no one in particular while pointedly looking at Chloe's plate. "Some of us still have to cook." "Art tells me you're a data analyst," Leo said, making air quotes with his fingers. "So you, analyze data? On a computer? Wow, bet that's tough work." I was about to snap at him when Chloe just smiled calmly and said, "It can be. It's mostly about finding patterns in the chaos. It's surprising what you can uncover when you know where to look." Her comeback was so smooth, so utterly unflappable, that Leo just blinked and fell silent. Things went from bad to worse when I chose that moment to share our news. I took Chloe's hand. "Actually, there's something we want to tell you all. We're engaged." A heavy silence fell over the room. My mom's fork clattered onto her plate. Brenda's eyes, sharp and predatory, zoomed in on the simple white gold band with a small, modest diamond on Chloe's finger. It was a ring we'd picked out together, one she loved because it was simple and practical for someone who typed all day. Brenda let out a short, ugly laugh. Well, I guess we know where all the money's going now, she said, her voice dripping with venom. Found yourself a real gold digger, didn't you, Art? Bet she has expensive taste. Chloe's hand trembled in mine, but she didn't say a word. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the linoleum. That's enough, Brenda. What? She said, feigning innocence. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. He doesn't have time for his family anymore. Never has any extra cash for us. Now we see why. We left. In the car, Chloe was quiet for a long time. Then she finally broke down, not in anger, but in guilt. I'm so sorry, Art, she cried. I feel like I caused all this trouble between you and your family. Hearing that, seeing her feel responsible for their poison, made me angrier than anything they had said to me. I was beginning to realize that the line on the mattress hadn't disappeared when we threw it out. It had just expanded, and my family was making it very clear which side I was supposed to be on. A year later, the ground fell out from under us. Dad got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The doctors gave him 6 months. He was a tough, stubborn man, and he pushed through for 7. The entire time Dad was sick, my focus was on trying to make him comfortable, on spending what little time we had left. I paid for a lot of the medical bills. Insurance covered the basics, but there were always extra expenses, special medications, equipment for the house, the endless trips to the hospital. I never kept track of how much I was sending. When my mom called and said they needed something for Dad, I just sent the money. Leo and Brenda's focus, however, was disturbingly different. While Dad was having a bad day with chemo, they'd be in the garage organizing his tools. While he was trying to rest, they'd be at the kitchen table with my mom, helping sort through paperwork. They were always asking about his savings account, his life insurance, his assets. They framed it as helping him get his affairs in order, but it felt ghoulish. They even started a GoFundMe page for his medical expenses. It was Brenda's idea. She wrote a long, dramatic post about this hard-working family man being struck down in his prime. The response was incredible. Friends, church members, Dad's old customers. They raised over $15,000. I thought it was all going to a dedicated account for his care. It was my Aunt Carol, my mom's sister, who unknowingly tipped me off. She called one afternoon just to check in. It was so nice of you to help them remodel their kitchen. Arthur, she said casually. Brenda was showing me pictures. Said Leo got a big bonus, and they wanted to get it done while your father could still see it. A bonus? Leo hadn't gotten a bonus. He was still fixing cars for cash in his driveway. The GoFundMe. The money. A remodeled kitchen. The pieces clicked together in my head with a sickening thud. I felt a wave of nausea, but I pushed it down. I told myself it was a misunderstanding. I was grieving, I was stressed. My family wouldn't do that. Not while my father was dying. It was a lie I told myself because the truth was too ugly to face. During this time, they got Dad to sign a power of attorney, giving Leo full control over his finances. My mom, overwhelmed and exhausted, encouraged it. Just let Leo handle it. Honey, she told me on the phone. He's here every day. It's just easier. Dad, exhausted from the pain and the medication, just signed where they told him to. He was too tired to fight, too tired to question. He just wanted peace. They used his desire for peace as a weapon against him, and by extension, against me. I just didn't see it yet. Dad passed away in late October. The funeral was a blur of hollow condolences and my mother's quiet weeping. I felt cold, like a part of my own foundation had been ripped out. When December came, Mom insisted we all come for Christmas. It would be the first one without Dad, and she wanted the family to be together. Chloe was nervous about going. Things had been tense ever since our engagement, but I held on to a sliver of hope that Dad's death might have shocked everyone into realizing what was truly important. Maybe this was a chance to heal. We showed up at 2 o'clock, right on time. We brought presents for everyone. Chloe, despite everything, had spent the morning baking her famous apple pie. The second we walked in, the hope evaporated. The air in the house was thick and cold. My mom, Leo, and Brenda were sitting in the living room. They stopped talking the moment they saw us. They exchanged these quick, unreadable looks. My mom hugged me, but it felt brittle, forced. She barely acknowledged Chloe, just took the pie and disappeared into the kitchen. We sat down on the couch, and the silence was awful. It stretched for 5 long minutes, a tangible, oppressive weight in the room. Finally, Leo cleared his throat with a loud, fake cough. "Listen," he said, leaning forward and trying to look serious and important. "We need to talk about some family business." Chloe, ever polite, started to stand up. "Oh, maybe I should give you guys some privacy." "No, please stay, Chloe," Brenda cut in, her voice like poison honey. "You should hear this, since you're so interested in our family's money." My stomach tightened. "What's going on?" I asked, though a dark, sinking feeling was already telling me. "Look, Art," Leo began, not quite meeting my eyes. "While Dad was sick, we had to make some tough decisions. For the good of the whole family." Brenda jumped in, her protector, her instigator. "Your brother did what needed to be done. We had the power of attorney. We had to put everything in Leo's name to keep it safe. The house, the garage, Dad's savings." She paused, watching my face for a reaction. "Everything." I felt the air leave my lungs. "What do you mean, everything?" "Your portion, too," Leo mumbled, finally looking at the floor. "The inheritance Dad set aside for you. It's all been transferred. It's done." I just sat there, the room tilting around me. The presence under the tree seemed to mock me. The smell of roasting turkey from the kitchen made me want to vomit. You can't just do that." "We already did," Brenda said, her sweet act dropping away to reveal the hard, ugly core beneath. "And it's perfectly legal. Family needs come first. You wouldn't understand." I looked at my mother. She was sitting in her armchair, staring at her hands, which were twisting in her lap. "Mom, did you know about this?" She finally looked up, her eyes pleading but her voice firm. "They have a family to think about. Arthur," she said softly. "They have children. You have your fancy job, your money. They needed it more than you." It was like being punched in the gut. Needed it more? My voice started to rise. "I paid for Dad's medical bills. I helped with your mortgage for years. I've been sending you money every time you asked." Brenda actually laughed. A short, sharp, ugly sound. "Oh, please. You think throwing us your spare change makes you a hero? We deserve that money. We were here, taking care of Mom and Dad. We're real family. Not some stuck-up computer guy who thinks he's too good for us." Then Leo, my brother, leaned forward. His face was a mask of resentment that had been building for 30 years. "Face it, Art," he said, his voice low and vicious. "You got no wife, no kids, no real life. You don't need it. We do." That was it. That was the moment everything shattered. I stood up, grabbing Chloe's hand. We turned to leave. "If you walk out that door, don't you bother coming back," my mother cried from her chair. I didn't even turn around. We walked out of that house, away from the smell of the turkey and the glittering lie of the Christmas tree, and I knew I had just lost my entire family. The drive home was a silent, vibrating bubble of fury. I had to pull over twice because my hand was shaking so badly I couldn't grip the steering wheel. When we finally got inside our apartment, the rage began to curdle into something else, something heavier. It was a profound, soul-crushing sadness. That night, I couldn't sleep. The anger was still there, a hot coal in my stomach, but it was joined by a creeping, insidious doubt. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every family dinner, every request for money, every passive-aggressive comment from the last 10 years. I turned to Chloe in the darkness. "Am I the bad guy here?" I whispered, the question tearing out of me. Did I do something wrong? Did my success make me arrogant and I didn't see it? Did I really forget where I came from? She wrapped her arms around me, her presence a solid, comforting anchor in the storm. "No, Art," she said firmly. "You didn't. You shared your success. You tried to lift them up. They didn't want to be lifted. They wanted to pull you down to their level. This isn't on you. This is on them." Her words helped, but I knew I had to do one last thing before I could accept that. I needed to know, for certain, that there was no hope left. The next morning, I drove to my mother's house. I didn't call first. I found her in the kitchen, drinking coffee, her face pale and drawn. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I pulled a single piece of paper from my jacket pocket, a loan application for a department store credit card they had taken out in my name. I'd had the bank email me a copy of the signed document. I laid it on the table in front of her. I pointed to the signature line. Mom, just look, I said, my voice steady. That's not my writing. You've seen my signature 1,000 times. That is not it. This is fraud. They stole from me. She stared at the paper, her eyes unfocused. She wouldn't look at the signature. She just shook her head, a tiny, repetitive motion. Leo is under a lot of stress. Arthur, she mumbled, pushing the paper away as if it were contaminated. He's the man of the house now. He does what he thinks is best. Don't cause trouble. A family has to stick together. That was it. That was the final nail in the coffin of the family I thought I had. It wasn't just that she was choosing them. It was that she was choosing to be blind. She was actively refusing the truth because the lie was more comfortable. I looked at my mother, this woman who had worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over our heads, and I saw a stranger. I walked out of her house for the second time in 2 days, but this time, the grief was gone. It was replaced by a cold, hard clarity. That night, our apartment transformed into a war room. The emotional storm had passed. Now it was time for strategy. I called Chloe's dad, Mr. Peterson. I explained everything, my voice calm and methodical. He listened without interruption. When I finished, there was a long pause. Arthur, he said, his voice the epitome of calm rationality. I want you to listen to me very carefully. Do not call them. Do not text them. Do not engage. You will not win an emotional battle with people who have no shame. From this moment on, you're a machine that gathers facts. Emotion is their weapon. Data is yours. Build a fortress of facts so high and so strong that their lies can't get over the walls. Chloe, my brilliant data analyst, pulled up a new spreadsheet on her laptop. He's right, she said, her eyes gleaming with determination. Let's find the patterns in their chaos. And so we began. He, the brother who took. I, the brother who built. And now, I would build a case that would tear his world apart. The next few weeks were a blur of late nights and early mornings, fueled by coffee and a cold, burning sense of purpose. Our living room, usually a place of relaxation, became an incident response center. I was on the phone for hours every day with banks, credit card companies, and loan agencies, using a tone of polite, professional concern as I reported case after case of identity theft. I believe there may have been some fraudulent activity on my account. I'd say my voice level, while on the inside I was screaming. Chloe was my commander-in-chief. She took the flood of emails and digital documents I was unearthing and organized them into a master spreadsheet, a work of art in its own right. It had color-coded tabs for everything: fraudulent credit cards, illegal loans, the GoFundMe scam, the inheritance transfer. Each entry had a date, an amount, a transaction description, and a link to the source document. Seeing it all laid out like that was horrifying and validating at the same time. The sheer scale of their betrayal was breathtaking. The Disney World vacation package, charged to a credit card, opened in my name a week after my father's funeral. The new living room set from a high-end furniture store. The endless charges at expensive restaurants and clothing boutiques. It was a visual representation of them, celebrating on my dime while I was grieving. We cross-referenced the dates. A $2,000 charge for new appliances appeared 2 days after I had transferred money to my mom for Dad's prescription costs. They were using my grief as a smokescreen for their greed. The most damning section was the one detailing the mortgage on their house, the one I had co-signed. They had been paying the minimums, but not with their own money. They were using my stolen inheritance to keep the loan current. And worse, using my good credit and name, they had managed to take out a second mortgage, pulling out tens of thousands of dollars in equity that didn't really exist. My firewall, the default clause, was sitting there waiting. They hadn't missed 3 consecutive payments yet, but they were dancing on the edge of a cliff they didn't even know was there. As I started the formal fraud disputes with the banks, the first ripples of their world being disturbed reached us. The harassing text began. From Brenda, I can't believe you would do this to your own family. You are a selfish, evil person. I hope you're happy. From my mother, a string of sad face emojis, followed by, your father would be so disappointed in you. From Leo, you better stop what you're doing. You have no idea what you're starting. Man up and accept it. Then Brenda took her campaign public. She wrote long, rambling posts on Facebook, filled with vague but pointed accusations about family traitors and people who forget their roots the second they get a little money. She posted pictures of her kids, talking about how she would do anything to protect them from the cruelty of the world. The irony was so thick, I could have choked on it. Then, the escalation. My boss called me into his office, his expression concerned. "Art, is everything okay? Your brother has been sitting in his truck in the parking lot for the last 2 hours, just watching the building." The humiliation was a hot flush that spread across my face. Leo was marking his territory, trying to intimidate me, to drag his mess into my professional world. He was no longer just a thief. He was a threat. The firewall I was building around my life wasn't strong enough. They found a way to breach it, and they did it in the most violating way imaginable. Chloe and I both had a long day at work. We came home after dark, tired and ready to just collapse on the couch. I put my key in the lock, and it felt wrong. It turned too easily. The door swung open into darkness. "Did you leave a light on?" Chloe asked. "No," I said, a cold dread snaking up my spine. I flipped the switch. The scene in our living room was one of pure, malicious destruction. This wasn't a robbery. A robber would have been neat, efficient. They would have taken the TV, the laptops, the valuables. The TV was still on the wall. But everything else, everything personal was annihilated. A framed photo of me and Chloe, taken the day I proposed, had been smashed on the floor, the glass ground into the carpet with a boot. A picture of me and my dad from when I was a kid, one of the few I had, was torn into tiny pieces. They had gone through our closet, pulled out Chloe's clothes, and poured bleach all over them. Her favorite dresses, the suit she wore for big presentations, all ruined. We walked numbly into the bedroom. Her work laptop, her lifeline, the tool of her trade, was submerged in the bathtub, which was filled with murky water. They hadn't just tried to steal my money. They had tried to destroy our lives, our memories, our ability to work. They wanted to leave us with nothing. On the kitchen counter, scrawled in what looked like one of my nephew's crayons on a piece of paper torn from his coloring book, was a note. 7 words that burned themselves into my brain. "Now you know what it feels like." Chloe let out a choked sob, her hand flying in her mouth. The strength and resolve she'd shown for weeks finally crumbled. Seeing her so violated, so scared in her own home, that was the moment something inside me snapped shut. The part of me that still felt a shred of pity, a remnant of brotherly connection, died in that trashed apartment. I wrapped my arm around her, my own hands shaking with a rage so pure and cold it felt like ice in my veins. "They will not win," I said, my voice a low growl I didn't recognize. "They will not break us." I pulled out my phone. My first call was to the police to file a report. My second was to a locksmith. My third was to my lawyer. When she answered, there was no emotion in my voice. It was flat, hard, and final. "We're moving forward with everything," I said. "Fraud, identity theft, grand larceny, breaking and entering. I want a restraining order. I want them prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. No more holding back. No more mercy." This was no longer about money. This was about survival. The wheels of justice turned slowly, but the evidence I had gathered was like rocket fuel. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Albright, took one look at the fortress of facts Chloe and I had built, and her eyes lit up with a grim professional satisfaction. "They've given us everything we need," she'd said. "They're not just thieves, they're arrogant thieves. That's the easiest kind to catch." The day of the court hearing, the air was thick with tension. It wasn't a trial by jury, but a civil hearing to address the fraud claims and the restraining order. Leo and Brenda were there with a court-appointed lawyer who looked young and overwhelmed. My mother sat behind them, looking small and lost. Their lawyer tried to paint them as a simple, struggling family who had made some unwise financial decisions while trying to manage their ailing father's estate. He portrayed me as a wealthy, vindictive brother, disconnected from the realities of their hard life. Then it was Ms. Albright's turn. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't use emotional language. She just methodically, clinically, took their story apart, piece by piece. She presented the bank statements with the clearly forged signatures. She showed the timeline, which proved they had booked a vacation with a fraudulent credit card while I was paying for our father's hospice care. She presented the police report and the photos of our ransacked apartment. With each new piece of evidence, the judge's expression grew more stern. Brenda tried to cry, dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue, but the judge wasn't looking at her. He was looking at a printout of her Facebook page, where she was bragging about her new kitchen. He looked at my mother. "Ma'am, were you aware that your son's signature was being forged on these documents?" My mother stammered, They have children." The judge cut her off, his voice sharp. "That is not an answer to my question, and it is not a legal defense for felony fraud." The ruling was swift and brutal. The judge found them liable for every single dollar of fraudulent debt. He ordered their wages to be garnished until it was all paid back. He granted my request for a permanent restraining order. He looked at them with utter disdain. "Your behavior is not just illegal," he said, his voice cold. "It is a profound moral failure." That's when Leo lost it. The facade of the put-upon family man shattered, and the resentful, hate-filled core was exposed. He stood up so fast his chair toppled over. He pointed a shaking finger at me across the courtroom. "You think you're so much better than us," he screamed, his face turning a blotchy, furious red. "With your fancy tech job and your fancy girlfriend. Acting all superior because you got out of the neighborhood. You're nothing. You hear me? You're still just that poor kid who shared my mattress." The courtroom fell silent. Everyone was looking at me. I could feel Chloe's hand tighten on my arm. For years, I had let his taunts, his jealousy, his bitterness chip away at me. I had absorbed it, ignored it, made excuses for it. But not anymore. I stood up slowly and looked my brother in the eye. My voice wasn't loud, but it was clear and carried across the silent room. "You're right, Leo," I said. "I was that kid, but I worked my way out. I built things you only know how to take." So yeah, I took a breath, letting the truth of the words settle in the air. "I am better than you." It was like I had lit a fuse. He let out an incoherent roar and tried to jump over the barrier to get at me. Two bailiffs grabbed him, wrestling him back as he screamed threats and curses. His own lawyer looked mortified. My mother just sat there, her face ashen, finally seeing the monster she had enabled. As they dragged my brother out of the courtroom, I didn't feel triumph. I just felt a deep, hollow emptiness. The battle was over. The family I once knew was gone forever. The aftermath of the court case was swift. The restraining order meant the texts, and the lurking stopped. The wage garnishments began, a steady, automatic drip of consequence that they couldn't evade. Leo was fired from the garage he worked at. Turns out, most employers aren't keen on keeping a convicted fraudster on the payroll, especially one who handles customer property. But there was one piece of unfinished business: the house. The house I had foolishly co-signed for. With the mountain of new debt and Leo's lost job, they defaulted on the mortgage almost immediately. They missed one payment, then a second, then a third. The bank sent them a foreclosure notice. My lawyer called me. "The default clause you put in that addendum is now active, Art. You have the right to assume the mortgage and take possession of the property." My first instinct was to walk away, to let the bank take it and wash my hands of the whole ugly affair. But then Aunt Carol called. She told me their plan. They were going to have Brenda's parents buy the house at the foreclosure auction for a rock-bottom price, and then let Leo and Brenda keep living there, effectively gaming the system one last time. A cold resolve settled over me. No, the taking was done. I showed up at the county courthouse for the foreclosure auction. Leo and Brenda were there, standing with their parents, looking smug. They thought they had it all figured out. They saw me, and Leo shot me a look of pure hatred. The bidding started. Brenda's father made the opening bid. I countered. He raised. I raised again. We went back and forth, my heart pounding in my chest. Finally, the price went beyond what they could afford. The auctioneer's voice echoed in the sterile room. Going once, going twice. Sold. To Mr. Arthur Jennings. The look on their faces, the shock, the disbelief, the impotent rage was something I will never forget. It wasn't a look of triumph on my face. It was the grim, quiet satisfaction of closing a door. I hadn't taken the house out of spite. I had taken it to enforce a final, unbreakable consequence. I had taken back the last thing they thought they could control. I never wanted the house. It was filled with ghosts and bad memories. But I had it renovated, repaired the damage they had done in their final, petty acts of vandalism, and put it up for rent. And in the lease agreement, my lawyer helped me draft a special clause, ironclad and legally sound. Leo and Brenda Jennings and their immediate family were explicitly forbidden from ever residing on the property. It's been 6 months since the courtroom. Life is quiet, quieter than it's been in years. Chloe and I moved. We bought a small house on the other side of town, a place with no history, no ghosts. We have new phone numbers, new email addresses. We installed a top-of-the-line security system with cameras covering every angle. It's a sad necessity, a scar from the battle that reminds us we can't ever be fully complacent. My relationship with my mother is a wall of silence, broken only by the occasional, unanswered call from her number. Brenda still posts online, a constant stream of victimhood narratives that shift depending on her audience. Some days I'm a manipulative villain. Other days I'm the puppet and Chloe is the evil mastermind. The hardest part is the kids, my nieces and nephews. I see pictures of them on Aunt Carol's Facebook and my heart aches. They've been told their uncle is an evil man, the reason they had to leave their home and change schools. I have to live with the fact that they will probably hate me forever for a crime their parents committed. It's a collateral damage that stings more than any dollar amount. But where one foundation crumbled, another has been built. Every Sunday, we have dinner at Chloe's parents' house. It's everything a family dinner should be. Loud, full of laughter, warm, and accepting. Mr. Peterson has taken to teaching me woodworking in his garage. Last week, as we were working on a bookshelf for our new house, he clapped me on the shoulder, a cloud of sawdust blooming around us. "Proud of you, son," he said simply. The 2 words I had craved from my own father my whole life, given freely by a man who chose to see me as family. It's a new foundation. It's smaller, quieter, but it's built on respect and trust. It's built on solid ground. Last week, a single piece of mail, forwarded from our old address, made it through the firewalls we'd built. It was a letter. The handwriting was a familiar, angry scrawl. It was from Leo. It wasn't long. It was just a few sentences of pure, distilled hatred, a final, pathetic attempt to land a blow. It ended with a single line that was meant to be his ultimate curse. "You came from nothing, and that's what you'll always be." I read the letter, and then I read it again. A few months ago, those words might have cut me. They might have dredged up all the old insecurities, the feeling of being the poor kid with his nose pressed against the glass of a better world. But sitting there, in the quiet of our new living room, with the late afternoon sun streaming through the clean windows, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel hurt. I felt a strange, quiet pity. I looked at Chloe, who was curled up on the couch reading a book, the picture of peace. I looked at the bookshelf we were building, at the life we were creating piece by piece. And I thought, Leo is half right. I had come from nothing, but he was wrong about the rest. Coming from nothing means you know how to build. It teaches you how to work, how to dream, how to construct a life from scratch with nothing but grit and determination. They only knew how to take. They inherited a world of limitations and never tried to see beyond its borders. And when they took everything they thought I had, I just built it all again, only stronger this time. I folded the letter, walked into the kitchen, and dropped it into the trash. I'm not the poor kid on the mattress anymore. I am the architect of my own life. And my legacy will not be what I came from, but what I chose to build.